Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast live here. I hope everybody's doing well. Sorry for the bit of the delay here. Had a series of updates taking place in the program here, so I had to pull back a little bit before we get started here. But for those of you tuned in, and hey, Doug, good to have you on board, Chief. Hope all is well with you and your family. And we're just going to go through some exercises here today based on some information we started last Thursday. And I went through a whole series of little thumbnail sketches on going into maybe some attack drones and asymmetrical work, for example, looking at plan view studies, for example, some plan views and looking at the different configurations of going extremely asymmetrical with engine systems, perhaps detection and radar systems and the like, and then putting a little bit in perspective, just to, again, real fast, almost 30-second to 40-second thumbnail sketches based on looking for a package, what I refer to as asymmetry, like an asymmetrical attack drone of some sort. So I went through a series of these sketches. I'll just kind of go quickly here through the lineup. There's the first page we did. In the second study we started putting little perspective elements of what they might begin to look like. But I think the real pursuit of last Thursday's stream was to just open up the doors a little bit and explore some adventuresome creativity in terms of how to package these things. And looking at flight systems and components and packaging that would kind of give it a new look or a different approach to certain things. So again, some plan view studies, again, the perspective here of getting more of a stealth-like elevation and perspective. And again, looking at a very, very, very adroit package system, very far-reaching in some respects. And I don't think the asymmetry is really that difficult to work with. It's just a matter of is it really feasible from the point of view of being an attack system that could be piloted and functioning properly within the system here that we're working with. So that was the second page we generated. And again, keep in mind, these sketches are done very rapidly and looking for just approaches, what ifs and how comes, so we can kind of build on these things. So then the last one we did was just kind of slowing down a little bit and getting into a package of three little concept sketches, being a little more organic in terms of being very round in the plan view, being very asymmetrical again with an offset wing, pod system for a radar. Maybe this one's piloted, but again, a different approach to it. And again, a little thumbnail sketch of what this might look like in plan view. Really not content with this approach, but that was interesting in terms of maybe a package. If we put wings on this thing and make it more symmetrical, might have had a possibility to work with. So those are the three I really kind of started with. And then from that point there, I went into a series of little pencil sketches, for example, about, well, let's explore this a little further. What if we took some of those ideas and began to look at something a little bit more specific in terms of being very, just slow them down a little bit. Again, pencil sketches based on A, asymmetry, B, different packaging situations like engine cell, weapon systems, wing, hydraulic wings. This thing maybe just articulates and folds up as it goes through a flight pattern and so forth. And again, a radar pod up on one end here to just kind of send out signals about incoming and outgoing enemies and the like. So that was one little pencil sketch we generated. Then I went to another approach, get a little bit of overhead, same kind of system, very piloted, like a twin canard at the rear section of this thing with a very single powerful engine, for example, to draw in. And again, weapon systems. And again, a very asymmetrical wing structure that would kind of take advantage of what we might be looking at from the point of view of just doing some really cool looking offset asymmetrical attack systems. Again, very theoretical, extremely abstract, but again, looking for pursuits of newness and, okay, do we attack this thing? What's new about it? How can we attack it and make it maybe solvable and turn it into a really neat little theme sketch? We're going to wrap it up here today. So from that study, I went from there into this one, for example, a little bit more conventional, almost like a stealth flying triangle with the twin engine systems. Again, this will be piloted, and this could be drone oriented. That could be a box system for radar if we retrofit the whole piece. So we're looking at just things to oh, thanks, Doug. We're looking at some exploratory stuff here, just taking a chance at what might come about in terms of being more of a flying process of very stealthy, but yet very asymmetrical. In this case, obviously symmetrical, but going back and forth between symmetry and asymmetry to find a balance here about what these sketches might do. So I'm just kind of building a vocabulary here of getting ideas down. And then went from that sketch into something a little bit more radical. Again, a very symmetrical piece, looking at twin engine systems off the rear end of this thing. Again, folding articulating wings that can kind of go like gull type. They can open up or close down depending on speed or variations thereof. And again, getting into just a very different, like a radar pod up on front, for example, to kind of tune in, and then maybe an offset engine system, or pardon me, not an engine system, but interdiction systems on the side of the aircraft itself, and again, weapons and the like. So all of that led me to say, this is kind of an interesting approach. So I took that sketch and enlarged it and went from that to this. And what I want to just accomplish today is getting a little thumbnail sketch here, working with some markers on how to work with this guy and get a little bit of a package down and begin to just kind of do a little marker study here just to kind of see what this package might look like and just begin to fill in some of the blanks, so to speak. So let's build on this guy. Let's kind of get this system down just a bit here. Let's kind of come back in and just lay in some little painterly systems across the whole form itself. Just lay in some shape. And that's really quickly here, just very empathically lay in some, just a little bit of marker study here. I'm gonna go marker on bond paper here, Copics, etc. And then just work into a very unique little approach to, there it is, there it is. Let's getting this down. Let's get a little bit across the bridge up on top of this thing and just slowly but surely just build some of these surfaces up and then begin to break into what the pattern might begin to look like. Just very lightly across the top, just again, dusting shape in, really organizing the forms. A little bit of engine nacelle work, let's kind of get those guys blushed in, and just very methodical, starting from light to dark, as we've always talked about when we go through the process of being creative with this stuff. Just building in surfaces. Again, into this, now let's get the offset down on this little garage pod here. Let's get that in place. Just laying in the lightest values for us, working from light to dark, as we've always discussed. Coming underneath, again here, leave a little bit of paper for highlight, and just gets really abstract, just nice and simple. Block this in. This detection pod up front. And just start to lay in surfaces. Just block it in. Very rapid, but at the same time, very illustrative. Just kind of keep it nice and open here. Go back in again. Let's get this little offset. Get that upper surface in place. And again, these little paddles, A, B, and C, all of a sudden start to just bring this thing off the page. Hey, Nemo, how you doing, Chief? Good to have you on board here today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you missed the first intro piece here, I went back and reviewed some of the things we did last Thursday, Nemo, looking at some of the asymmetrical stuff. And I went through a series of pencil sketches. In fact, let me just kind of bring them back up for what it's worth here. It's going to fill you up and fill you into where we are. So from last week's set of studies, which were very rapid, real quick pen sketches, went back in and said, all right, let's look at something maybe a little bit more challenging here, slow the process down a touch, and started a series of pencil sketches on this asymmetrical, or this A-wing system that we're looking at, with an engine system and a radar pod of some sort. So it's, again, a bit of a stretch, but there was a first sketch we did. Then I went from that into this one, which was kind of interesting, where we did the same process, offset engine, piloted or non-piloted pod system, and again with this asymmetrical wing. And the nice thing about both of these sketches, this wing end here would kind of flip or roll depending on speed of variation and take it from there. So I went from that process into this and went to a more conventional, almost like a plan for you, triangular form. Again, it could be the pilot mounted or, again, non-piloted, just a drone system itself with twin engines and the like, giving it a little more symmetrical. Kind of B-wing fighter. Yeah, there you go. Very much like that, Nemo, so much so. So I went from that variation and I went to this one. I thought, just kind of an interesting little ladder piece where you've got this very strong pod system, non-piloted, twin engines, and again, articulate, almost gull wing systems that kind of, and this one is more of an A-wing. Yeah, so we're getting back into more of like a flip wing system for interdiction purposes. So I kind of preferred that little look there. So I went ahead and enlarged it. And as you tuned in there, just started to enlarge or tune in some of the shapes and surfaces. We're going to do a little marker comp here, just kind of bring it in. Now notice that dries, so go into a second pass into this thing, right back into this little second pass to get the tones down a little bit. I'm going to keep this nice and simple with a combination of both pencil and marker. So around, let's get these sidewalls in place here. Just restain it, bring the wing system in. Let's get this guy in place. Just a tone. Back one more pass in the engine nacelles. Let's get a little bit of this underneath. A highlight in here, highlight in there. Just a real quick painterly process here of laying down some of these shapes. Again, we'll come back and retone as we go here. Now into the wing system. Just nice and easy. Just really delicately balancing across the entire form. Let's just kind of brush this in. Let it fade as it goes back. Bring this into play here. A little more animated with that form. Again, down below, let's take this guy, stain it back just a touch, working very quickly, just filling in forms. Find that leading edge. Again, in here, let's come down here. That little trench, let's go back in a little further with the shape and stain that in. A little bit of highlight, come back over the top of that, and let's just cross-reference this shape here. And begin to lose it along that highlight. underneath, staining it all in very lightly first. Come in very quickly. We'll come back and detail this as we go. Again, on this side, same thing. We'll come back and I'm just going to sleeve through it. Pardon me as I turn this just a touch. Staining this in, walk through it very lightly first. Stain it in. Come down that highlight, get the shadow sides inside that underneath that pod. Same thing here, a little bit of that touch. There it is, and there it is. And just ice that in, just nice and easy. Just staining in a painterly approach, very lucid. Underneath, a support structure, and again, we'll detail this as we come out of this thing. So there's a basic blush right there, just the forms in first, just kind of coming right back in. And just really staining things down just a little bit. We're going to go real subtle values here. Let's come back in and begin to change the tempo. A little bit darker. We're going to a number 2. Copic. Start to separate some of these shapes just a bit. Shadow underneath this, a little more color in this thing. I'm going to come back in a little bit here with some, obviously, first of all, some good marker definition. We'll come back in with some pencil detail work here. Put the shadow side down on that little buttress here. A little negative area there, and there, and there. Come back in there. Let's start just to slowly but surely block this thing in. Let's change this little pod system here up front. Just going to get this started. Little by little, we're going to slowly bring this off the page here and begin to really detail it with a lot of pencil and line work as we go through it here. Underneath there's a shadow, a little bit of a bite line there. Just going to get this little piece in place. Piloted or not, just going to get that in place. Let's just build the form. And some definition in the wing surface here. I'm going to change the tone of this guy just a bit. As I rotate that just a touch. A little bit of animation. In the shadow. In here, just a real slight sleeve in the actual wing structure itself. Come back in and let that go. Come back in and get that just a little tighter into that underflap. And turn this about just a touch. Let's roll this thing and get that little tint change here in the wing surface. Get that down, the little trailing edge in there, and again underneath in shadow. Slowly but surely, we just want to build this thing in terms of case of value. Just kind of bring it all together here and see what begins to happen. Little by little, we kind of bring things up out of the shape itself. Let's go to number 3 gray. So we build this thing up just a touch. Now we start to put a little bit more, keep it nice and neutral and mechanical looking. This is what we're after. Again, let's get this pod to word here. Pardon me as I turn that just a bit. I'm going to start to just separate some of the surfaces out. Little by little, bring this thing to life. There we go. Let's just stop there just for a second. What do you think so far? Just slowly but surely bringing the surface out of the page and begin to really turn on, for example, what the shapes are doing and begin to really define some of the surfaces here we work with. Let's have a little bit of fun with this thing. Say, okay, let's do this. Let's get some of this guy, some graphics in this game. Now let's put some thunder in this thing. A little bit of more value. That means I rotate that just a bit. I'm going to come back in a bit more detail on this stuff once with a little bit of pencil work to get this little process started here. I'm just trying to stain in little areas and just begin to let this thing come off the page and just slowly let it dip just a touch here. Everybody out of the pool. I hear thunder. Yeah. What do you think, Doug? Coming along all right? What do you think, Nemo? It's coming along okay? Just making sense, gang? Let's get this little unit out of the way too. Again, this could be piloted or non-piloted. A little bit of cockpit area there in case it's necessary. Get that into place here. And again, really blushing in the surfaces so we can get some sort of a definition put together here for us. Sorry, I have some business running on the side and watching with, hey, no problem, Nemo, no problem whatsoever. Nope, I'm just glad you're on board here, Doctor. Let's do this, get that in place, that in place. Let's kind of tune down here and let's get this guy, little detail work, just some little fussy stuff, but nonetheless, all makes a difference here. Let's come back in and get this a little deeper. Get those all in place. And let's go back and get this shelf in place here. The support shelf. Little by little. Put a little bit of tone on this side here. Get this shape to kind of walk out a little bit on us. Secondary highlight in there. There we are. We'll kind of clean it up as we go. Now let's knock it down one more notch here. But pardon me, before I do that, I'm going to just kind of correct something here. Just going a little deeper now with the definitions. And some of these shapes kind of pull off the page now, little by little. We're kind of getting, hey, Linear, how you doing, Chief? Do you work at both ends first, extreme light and extreme dark? Yes, I do often. Dark. Sometimes I'll go very light in value, and then when I start to see the thing push, transparency and canopy. Yeah, just a nice, simple little version of getting the lights and darks to come together. And oftentimes, I would like to work light to dark first. But once the surfaces start to read a little bit, then I can come back in and really begin to push them a little further. So that's what we're after here. So let's kind of carry on here. Let's get this little bit of shadow in this guy now. Start to really punch some of the surfaces we're dealing with here. Let's kind of get this kind of cross-reference here just a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of those guys. Let's put a little shadow underneath this little offset. Now we're getting some really tiny little tuning in pieces here that'll make a huge difference, I hope. A little bit of shadow in this guy. I just drop this whole form right out. And again, we're looking forward to what this is building up to is a lot of pencil definition. I'm just laying in surfaces and shape here. Hey, how you doing, Shadow? Good to see you, Chief. What I'm doing is just laying the groundwork to start to get into some really interesting things in terms of drawing and definition. Let's get a little bit of reflection back inside this guy. So Nemo, you can see how that all comes together. A little more definition up on top here. I'm just starting to pick up on certain little details here that hopefully are going to make a difference as we go down the line here. Again, transparency here. You get that kind of reflected a little bit. Let's run that across. Let's get that highlight to read a little bit. And then oftentimes you get a neutral system like that. It's always good to come back in and say, well, if you're going to transparency with this thing, put a little bit of tone or color in this thing by coming back in and warming it up just a bit. Just come in with just a little bit of color. Man, look what that did. All of a sudden, bam, there she is. She's just kind of rolling off the page now. So let's go back in and put a little bit more metallic look in this thing. Over the top of that gray, just kind of tone that surface down just a bit. By the way, Doug, I hope that answered your question. Just again, a little bit more metallic feel to it now. Let's kind of bring this into play. And again, just a touch more over the top of this, a little more transparency. Just to give it a little bit more life, a little bit of animation across the top of that wing structure. Now we're getting really animated just to kind of take away some of the cursedness of, or the crispness of this whole thing being very static and so forth. So let's kind of go back to a lighter value here. Let's go back to number 1 gray and just bring into play here some really interesting things. Just kind of knock this surface right out. And with this one, fill it in just a bit more. You're not happy with this approach, so I think I'll go back to a darker value up on top here. Let's kind of take this little area here and just knock it out. Get a little bit of separation in some of those shapes. That's better. What I hope you're seeing here is how forms are built. You just don't go in there, for example, let's say, hey, Doc, do you ever have a clean the ends of the market? No, I really don't. It just, I keep scrubbing those guys. I use them so much, shadow are already there, so to speak, so not a lot of problem there. When they run over so many other colors, does it take away from the original? Yeah, it'll tint it a little bit, and I think that's part of the mystique of putting this stuff together, Shadow. Very definitely, it will absolutely alter the tone just a bit, but it still keeps it pretty crisp. It's a little bit leading edge form on this guy. A little more edge definition. Let's roll that over. Let's roll that into that. Let's get the same edge over here. Take that into play. A little bit bolder now, just to kind of bring some of this stuff together. And I think for what it's worth, too, let's kind of add a little bit of content here to this thing. Let's put a little bit of some of this into it as well. Let's kind of change that over to a nice bold yellow. We can actually see where that process is coming in here. There we go, much better. You can actually see this thing. Let's see how that works. You can reflect that little bit of that color right back into that iron cast there. There it is. Let's color pocket in through here just to change the tempo just enough. All of a sudden, now we're getting some real impact in through here. Little by little, just little touches like that make a huge difference. Haha, Jasmine says hi. She just ran across the keyboard. All right. So there we go. Let's go back in a little bit more definition. Get these guys to read a little bit more, a little bit darker, especially in through here. Let's get these nacelles to work here for us. Rough it in. Go to the other side here. Now we're getting a little more drama in some of the forms. Now it's really starting to come off the page here, hopefully. Let's see, this shape language screams. Yeah, it's, I hope so. I hope it screams something that's good. Glad you're still with us there, Nemo. It's good to have you on board, Doctor. By the way, hey, Doug, did I answer that question all right about value and color, light to dark, and all that stuff? Hopefully. It's kind of just a little bit more. A touch more definition. Let's get that little nacelle, that little negative place in here. And with that on that side, just little touches. Boy, it's really delicate. But boy, it makes a huge difference when you start to really bounce these guys around. Now let's get a little bit more definition in some of these artillery pods. I'll come back, as I said earlier, a little more sketch definition when we start to use pencil. Let's get those little guys in there, there, and there. Same thing over here, there, and there, and there. Just little touches. All right, let me look at that. What do you think, guys? Coming along okay? Coming off the page all right? Let's see. Doug Ritt, yep, okay, good deal. The nacelles are the only thing that isn't RSI, but I like them. Very retro. Yeah, let's go back. I tried a little bit of combination of both there, Shadow. With that, I think I'll take a chance at something and go back to the old, almost A10 system, power systems up on top. There's a bit more tone in this guy here. Ready to start to knock this thing out now. It's some real strong value. Wow, that's starting to come together now. I mean, the contrast of the patchiness of darks and lights really make a huge difference here. Let's get a bit more tone in this thing, a little more reflection in here. Get that to work. Let's knock these guys out just a bit. Almost there. For what it's worth, I'll put a little bit of romance in this guy. More of a tone change in this nacelle. Hope I'm not running out of paper there, but just slowly but surely begin to build this thing up and let it run into the system here. It's really kind of a lot of drama, but nonetheless, let's hope it works. What's coming is a whole lot of thunder, because the drawing cycle is going to make a huge difference when we come together with this whole thing. So let's kind of knock that surface out a bit with the light source. There it is there. Got this little paddle piece underneath here, so that kind of stays where it is. That's fine. Now there's a definition right now. We're slowly but surely, that thing's starting to come off the page. Hopefully, this is making sense. Let's see. Hey, let's see. Doug had a great question, Doc. How do you know when you're done? Well, I think hey, Blessed, how are you? Good to have you on board here. I think it all comes together, Doug, quite frankly, when, sorry, I missed your question there, Doug, sorry. How do you know when you are done? I think when I start to see, for example, that there's a balance between what I'm trying to illustrate, for example, a lot of the detail work in the cockpit area, some of the wing structures and so forth, and getting a good balance of light source and darks and lights. I don't want to over busy. I notice there's a lot of paper coming through here, Doug. I think that's the secret to it all. Getting it right down to the idea of really coming down to the nitty-gritty. So now, how much do I need to really guarantee what this thing looks like in terms of keeping it clean, keeping it simple, and very discernible? So let me just finish up. Does that help, Doug, or not? So it's really watching what the overall balance of media is used. I'll go back. Let's go back to that simple question we've had all the time, very quickly, about when you work with this stuff. It's a real specific formula I like to work with, and it works every single time. And it's simply this: that every good illustration or concept work, those look like impellers rather than sci-fi vintage, very tangible. So that's great, Doug. I always like to think of a sketch. 100% of that sketch should be the following: 50% paper, 25% sketch, and 25% medium. So you keep things open for this reason. I'll come back in a little bit of color here. That's that. I'm going to come back to just enough little touches like so. Now, that's a pretty good balance right there. Let me do one more thing here before we go any further. Let's kind of get this number 1 gray and just slowly but surely banking this upper piece. It's just a little ragged here. Let's kind of get this offset to work. There it is there. One more pass. Let's get these guys a bit more distinct. And for shadow's benefit, here's an example of how that overlap changed the tint of that reflected gray in the engine cell itself. So let's go back in here, and we're going to go to a little lighter color here. Let's kind of go back to this. Get some warning lamps up on top here, a little bit of touch of that, that, and that. And again, there, there, and there. And project those out just a touch. So there we are. That basically does the job that I need to work with as far as the concept goes. So let's do this. Let's kind of scream this thing up a little bit and come back in and say, all right, now the definition matters. A little bit of drawing time here. Writing it down just a bit more. Then I'm getting how the drawing begins to really enhance the overall flavor of the sketch. And you're not muddying things up, so to speak. You're just kind of laying it just enough, just definition to kind of let this thing scream off the page. Drawing definition, everything. Always been a huge proponent of that, always will. A little bit of a wing offset. You don't get that with a marker. You get that with just a lot of patience and drawing back into the form itself. Oops, sorry. And lo and behold, what do you think, gang? There we are. That's it. More pew-pews. Hey, how you doing there, Chip? Good to have you on board there, Doctor. Just a little bit of review. We went through some things last week, and then this whole concept of putting together some asymmetrical drones, so to speak. I came back and did a whole series of studies on that thing last Thursday, for example. I just thought I'd come back in today and tune in on some things a little bit cleaner and go more of a symmetrical piece that we're looking at here. So I think what I'm looking for here is just, let me do this one last bit here. We'll see what happens here. Let's kind of see if we can get some information out of this beauty. See what happens here. I'm going to let that go as is, as a study, and I'm going to come back in and maybe put a little bit of enhancement, for example, a little bit of pastel detail and the like into this thing, and really see what happens with it. So let's kind of do this. Let's get a little bit of hot spot in that thing too. Let's come right back in, a little more drawing definition. All comes down to drawing, gang. The media can do an awful lot for you, but the drawing does everything for you. So along this little shoulder here, let's get a little bit of highlight along that area there, a little bit of there. And again, just enough information here to just kind of really give this thing some real info. Put a hot spot out of that. A little bit of hot spot out of that. Again, up on top here. And again, just a little more definition under these systems here. And just a nice little slow down exercise to get this form to kind of hum just a little bit more based on where we were last week. Just looking at, again, this asymmetrical. Let's put a little more tone back into it. Let's just push us just a little bit further. More drawing definition in there. And there it is, gang. What do you think? Anybody, any commentary at all? Thanks very much, gang. Well, it's a very quick exercise here. Let me just kind of organize this just for a bit here. I'm going to take this sketch, and I'm going to start putting maybe put a little bit of composition behind it for next week. For example, maybe on Tuesday we'll kind of come back. Pardon me, tomorrow we'll come back and add a little bit of color to this thing. Yeah, this is quick. This is a very quick study here, Shadow. I think it's really interesting how it all comes together here. Oh, I forgot to do one thing here. Pardon me. A little bit of shadow definition in some of these bulb systems, lighting system up on top of the other side of that nacelle. There we are, on the wing rather. A bit of shadow underneath that guy. Can I get that all put together? There it is. So I'm going to come back in and do a very compatible looking maybe backdrop in this thing. They're going to give it a setting. I don't want to push it too far here. I think we've got some good information to work on. I don't want to destroy but again, keeping it nice and easy. Coming back in and just doing enough to keep it nice and sane, and then just got to get some more drawing definition in here. Just going to clean this thing up just a bit more. There you are, there, and there. Some more shadow across or reflective light back into that pillar area, glass. A little more content there, just enough. Give it some real bounce. There you go. I mean, I think that's enough definition to keep things nice and clean. It looks like it's menacing, I hope. You guys are far more familiar with some of the whole idea of just being sinister and SC related, Star Citizen. You guys know a lot more about that material than I do. I'm still learning as I go. But I find this to be an intriguing category. And I'll go back and review some of the things we started with here, just so we'll wrap up the program here. I came back after last week and just started to look at doing some thumbnail sketches here, some real quick little asymmetrical mono-wing studies for these processes. So I started with a little pencil sketch there, for example, a little single wing unit, very quick and simple, dirty. Again, same thing, single wing, offset engine, manned or unmanned drone system. Went to more of a symmetrical, almost like a flying triangle. And again, it could be either pod related or else engine related, obviously engine power related, and either cell or no cell. And that little thumbnail sketch, yeah, that's kind of an interesting view here. We've got these wings that can kind of articulate and move just a little bit as you go here. So it started there, and then let's go all the way back to some of the earlier studies here. So for those of you who tuned in a little bit later, we started last Thursday, or probably last Thursday, with just little real fast pen sketches to kind of get a feel down for what we're after. So there was a page of those, some of those, looking at just plan view studies, real lucid sketches. Then this guy, a little bit of perspective. And from that area right there, this was what kind of sprung the idea of going from that study to, let's see if we can get them together here, to that study. A little bit more definition in it, obviously, but let me see if we can get that up now. I can't make it. Anyway, those are the two surfaces we were dealt with here. So this is kind of the final little thumbnail study for this attack drone. Interesting, and hopefully it'll all come together. Very, very lethal looking, very sharp in some areas, very much of a floater. And again, these wings kind of move on you a little bit asymmetrical. I want to keep that part of the theme. And then also, oh, Shadow, just picked up your question or two. Can't wait until you're right next door. Yeah, me too. I mean, it's just been such an absolute melee from one day to the other here. I've not forgotten that at all, Shadow. I'm looking forward to it as well. And it'll be a great time to get you involved in some of this stuff and go one-on-one and teamwork and the like, and get this some conversation on this design stuff here. And I really do miss that. So I know you've been very busy, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And also for me coming on board over the offices and really kind of joining forces. It'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, Chip, a lot of many sharp edges. I just wanted to get away from some of the suppleness and some of the things that we were dealing with last week. This is a little bit more powerful. And again, I want to wrap it up here today by saying that this is just the beginning of a little thumbnail sketch. I'll come back in, put a little bit of atmosphere and environment into this thing, maybe wrap it up sometime tomorrow and take a really good look at putting some environment into this thing. So that was basically the thrust of this sketch today, just to get them, slow things down, pick a theme, and get into a really interesting concept sketch here of what we're looking at as far as an attack drone. So there we are, gang. I just cannot thank you enough for tuning in today. I got a bit of a late start because of some updates on the program here, on the computer, so to speak. I had to wait about 10 minutes for everything to upload. And we finally got things cranking as we go here. So again, if I've done something right here today, please tell me. And if I've done something wrong, please tell me. And feel free also to drive me some notes. I mean, my Jim at Dr. Contrast is my email address. Feel free to please drop in some notes about likes and dislikes, and maybe some things you'd like the MEC draw or facilitate for your benefit. So not that I can be a big help there, but if I can be of some help, more than happy to do so. I cannot thank you enough for all the information here and the input you've spent with me today. Great stuff, gang, and please visit my website at drcontrast.com. And hope you have a great day. And boy, I was all sign up for this because it's such a powerful statement to make, and I really believe with all my heart. So many things to take care of, but number one thing is this. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you really are. Thanks for tuning in, gang. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock with some maybe a continuation of this guy, and go into maybe another study come Thursday. And the reason I'm signing up for today, I've got a couple of calls I've got to take care of that are very interesting in the office coming in, so I've got to abbreviate here before 2:30 and get things moving on here. So again, thanks so much for your time, gang. Have a great day. To all of you tuning in, thank you so much. And again, dare to be great. Thank you very much.